Welcome to Write with Love. I'm your host, Sarah Williams, best-selling author, speaker, and creative entrepreneur. Each week, I chat to passionate and inspiring authors about their journey in creative writing. Some are traditionally published, some do it themselves. Everyone's journey is different, and everyone has something interesting to say. We all love love and love what we do. Today's show is brought to you by our amazing fans and supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the show and get some awesome bonus episodes, go to patreon.com/Sarah Williams Author to learn more. Now here's today's show. G'day and welcome to Write with Love. Today on the show, I'm chatting to Maya Linnell. How are you today?
I'm very good, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries, it's my pleasure. You've been a very busy lady. And we'll be talking all about what you've been doing in just a minute. But can you start by telling us about yourself and your writing journey so far?
Yes, well, I've just released a rural romance novel and it's called Wildflower Ridge, and it's my first book, so it's very exciting for me. It came out at the start of June with Allen and Unwin Publishers, and it's had some fantastic reviews so far, which just absolutely warms my heart because being my first novel, working as a journalist in a country newspaper, you'd get cornered in the supermarket and people would say, "Oh, I didn't like that article that you did about such and such," or whatnot. So it's really nice I had a lot of people that would also come up to me on a regular basis and say, "Oh, I loved that," or "I loved the article or the piece that you did or the research behind a certain article." But to receive such positive feedback for my debut novel so far is just wonderful.
Yeah, so that's really cool. You were a journalist first, so obviously you've always liked writing. Do you know when that started? It was as a child, or?
Yes, so I've always been a huge bookworm. Mum and Dad were always happy to give me as many books as I wanted, and they had quite an eclectic library. So I'd be reading Huckleberry Finn and Black Beauty, My Friend Flicker, as well as going in for some Agatha Christie. I think I remember there was one that had a very politically incorrect title back when I must have been in about grade 2 or 3. And I think it's now called 10 Little Indians, but it had a ridiculously incorrect name. The version that I was reading that I didn't even realise was highly inflammatory until I had it written down in a book review in about year 3. And the teacher had to take me aside and say, "No, we don't actually say that." And I said, "Well, it's on the cover of this book that I've got," which Mum and Dad will probably have gotten from the op shop years and years and years before. But yeah, so I've always loved reading, and that translated pretty quickly into loving writing. And I had some fantastic teachers in primary school that said, "Go for it, Maya, do whatever you like." And so off and away I was. And then I started thinking about writing for magazines. I think I would have been a teenager, early teens, and try to submit some articles to the Totally Wild magazine, which was a bit of a highlight for me when I was young. But my dad said, "No, Maya, wild panda stories that you've researched directly from the encyclopedia, they're not really probably what people are after. Why don't you write what you know?" And so I decided to write an article for the That's Life magazine, which is, the ones that you get for the $2 at the supermarket checkout. And I wrote a great article about the 40-hour famine that my girlfriends and I were doing, and that was the first article that I had published.
Wow, I remember doing the 40-hour famine. That was really exciting. I don't think they let kids do it these days.
No, well, we would just binge. We would eat barley sugars and orange juice for that whole 40 hours and watch horror movies. It was horrific. I can't believe we damaged our minds and our bodies so much in the name of charity. But no, we loved it. And I got my first article printed writing about it, which worked for me.
Yeah.
And then I went into journalism in my early 20s and was off and away.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I love when people come from a journalistic background too. It makes it really interesting. Did you find changing from the nonfiction to the fiction hard, or did it help?
Yeah, also I was always particularly drawn to the longer profile pieces that I was writing. And so there was a series called My Times. And so I'd go out and interview people who are maybe 70 or 80 years old in our community And because it was a small newspaper and there were so many lovely characters around, I got to sit and spend a couple of hours speaking with some of these people and getting down the stories of when they had to walk 8 miles to school, and, you know, the weekends would be full of hunting rabbits to, you know, feed their family and whatnot. So it was really interesting. I love those pieces. And I think writing fiction, it was a change in that I had to completely invent these scenarios from my own imagination, but I could really go into depth with the different backgrounds of these people that I wanted to write about, and, you know, what their history would be. So I loved being able to completely immerse myself in whichever direction that I wanted.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And you've been involved with the Romance Writers of Australia for a little while now. Tell us about what you've been doing for them.
Yeah, so one of the things, I've always been keen on going to author talks, and our library here in Southwest Victoria has an amazing array of authors come through, and it's wonderful. They put on great events regularly. And one of the talks that I went to when I was, I think, perhaps halfway through my first draft of this book, Victoria Perman, who is very well regarded within the Romance Writers Australia group. And she was the first person to ever mention Romance Writers Australia. And she said, oh, it's this wonderful organisation and so supportive. And there's a conference every year and we get to drink cocktails and champagne and talk about writing, and there's workshops. And I thought, you know what, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm in for that. So I signed up straight away after her author talk, and it's been great because not only have I met wonderful people like yourself who are very keen on writing and I guess enhancing relationships between other writers, I've also been lucky enough to do quite well in the competitions, so that the manuscript, before it became a published book, went through a few different rounds of edits, of course. And I had feedback from competitions and making finals with 3 of the different competitions last year, which was a huge boost. I think, to know that the story, you know, appealed to a range of people, and there were some great strengths in there that I could work on.
Yeah, and competitions are always good for the feedback, if nothing else. You know, you get to
Absolutely.
yeah, it's brilliant. I've been entering competitions for a long time. They're definitely a good way of getting that feedback and finding out what people like and what your strengths and weaknesses are.
And there's nothing like the thrill of waiting for that email to come in your inbox and think, oh, maybe I've done well this year, or oh, maybe I've just snuck into the finals and whatnot. So I think I love that little thrill of suspense, knowing or not knowing whether it's going to do well. So I also think it pushes you to write outside your comfort zone as well, because you know, I made it my mission last year to enter every single contest within the Romance Writers Australia that was applicable to me. Obviously I couldn't enter the professional ones, but all the ones for aspiring writers. So I gave them all a shot, and some I did well in, and the spicy bites, I worked out pretty quickly I wasn't particularly strong in that field. And that was a great little laugh, actually, to read the feedback on my entry. Who knew that you needed to have quite high heat levels in a spicy bites competition?
That's it. So your novel, which we'll talk about in just a sec, but I'd love for you to just tell us about your submitting process. Like, did that have anything to do with RWA?
Yes, Romance Writers played a huge role in my publishing contract, in that I was all set last year to have my manuscript ready to pitch at the conference in Sydney in August. That was my goal at the start of last year. That's what I was going to do. And I saw a pitching opportunity for people who were outside of capital cities. And so I pitched through that, which went really well. It didn't eventuate into a contract, but it was a great experience. And I felt better prepared for the August conference that was coming up. But between then and August conference, when they'd released the details of who was taking pitches at the conference, I thought, well, I'll just do a bit of research and a bit of due diligence, and made contact with one of the fabulous publishers from Allen Unwin ahead of the conference, and it all went from there, which was very fortunate for me.
Excellent. So, did you submit a lot before that and get rejections, or was you just kind of got lucky with that one?
Yes, I was very fortunate to kind of skip through the process, which I think, having a background in journalism, helped in that it was I wouldn't say it was a clean draft. It was quite a structured draft, and it had been through quite a few rounds of editing before I decided to put it out into the world. And I've got this, I had a Post-it note stuck to my computer for pretty much the whole time that I was writing the first draft. And it said, secure writers don't try to sell the first draft. They patiently rewrite until the novel is as ready as possible. And I had to look at that many times because I wanted to send it out. I wanted to get it out there and get some feedback to know whether I was going to be waiting for 20 years to get published or if it was going to be going through relatively smoothly, which fortunately for me it did. But I really had to look at that post-it note so many times before I to rein myself in.
Yeah, that's a good lesson. I've certainly heard of a lot of people sending in first drafts and you kind of cringe just going, oh, it takes a long time before you can say you're good at anything. It's like 10,000 hours or something. And
yes.
So did you use professional editors before you submitted to Allen and Unwin, or did you just keep working and getting critiqued and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I studied through Writers Studio Australia for my first and second draft. And that was excellent in that I had a structure to follow. And I figured that if I was going to do this whole author thing and give it my best shot, I really wanted to know that I'd have some solid structure in place. So I guess it was each month, I'd be putting forward one scene in about 20 that I'd written and getting feedback about that. So that was really helpful. But no, I didn't actually have it professionally edited. I sent it it went to my mum, it went to my nana, it went to my sister, and then to a few other friends as well who gave me some excellent feedback about different bits of pacing and some characters that were so there was a couple of nasty characters in there and I'd really done them pretty nasty. So they weren't particularly likable. And I've kept some elements of those characters, but they're not as all out mean as they were in, I guess, the first draft.
So tell us about Wildflower Ridge, which is the novel you've done, and show us the cover because it's a beautiful cover and I want to see it. Excellent. So tell us about this one.
This is Wildflower Ridge, and Wildflower Ridge is a rural romance, and it's all about farming families, country living, and following your heart. And we've got the main character is Penny McIntyre, who we can see here on the front cover. And she lives in Melbourne. She's got a great life that she loves, a very high pressure, high power career. And all of a sudden she's unwell and she has to head back to the family farm to recuperate. And so Penny's thrown back into the thick of country living. She's got her 3 sisters. There's mixed reactions from the different siblings about her being home again. And she's got a few conflicts in the mix as well, not the least the fact that her ex-boyfriend is now the leading farmhand on her father's property. So we've got some great conflict. We've got some interesting social issues going on there. And I think it's a real fun read.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So there's romantic elements in there, but how steamy are we going to get with Wildflower Ridge?
Well, Wildflower Ridge, I decided to keep it not quite steamy because I think given that it was my first foray into rural fiction and rural romance, I wanted to try and get the storyline down pat. And it's not to say that there won't be any spice in further stories, but for this one, there's not too much spice. It's closed door. It's more of a sweet story. And my 10-year-old son was very eager to read it as soon as we got the printed copies in the house. He raced off and started reading it. And I thought, you know what, he probably will get a page or 2 into it, maybe a chapter, and realise that rural romance is not really his thing. He's a bit more of a Harry Potter, Hunger Games type of guy. But he read it. It took him 5 days and loved it. So he thinks it's now his officially favourite book.
That's a decent-sized book.
It is. I was very impressed.
So it's out with Allen and Unwin. It's out now, and so we've got the print copies, we've got ebook copies, and audio books coming soon, I hear.
That's right. Yes, they've Wave Sound have decided to put together the audiobook, so that's available. I've had some friends that have already finished listening to it through their local libraries as well as Audible. So it's on the market in audio, ebook, and paperback.
Yeah, and for our American and overseas listeners, will they have access to ebooks at least?
Yes, definitely. So anyone who's overseas can order it through Book Depository or Amazon. And then I've heard a little whisper that it will also be distributed throughout the States as well. So that's a bit exciting.
It is. It's always great. Fantastic. And you're doing a lot of promotions at the moment. So I know you've got a book tour organised. And I know this because I'm going to be joining you for part of it. So tell us about some of your dates and destinations.
Yes, well, being someone who loves going to author talks myself, I thought I would be very remiss if I didn't give back to the community. So I'm heading off by the time the podcast goes to air. I think my next date will probably be Millicent, which is on the 28th of June, which is my hometown. So that's where I went to high school. And Mum's already organised a bus of people to come from Beachport, which is where they're now living. And the local librarians are very excited that I'm coming to do a book talk after spending so much time there as a kid. And from there I'll head to Adelaide, Rundle Mall, the Dimmicks there in the middle of the city, as well as the Adelaide Hills and also Victor Harbour where we have family. I'll be doing some country Victorian dates. There's Stawell and Horsham in early July, and then I'm hoping to have a Ballarat/Terang date as well coming up soon, but that's in the pipeline. And then in August, I can't wait to come up and see you. That'll be great, Sarah. So you and I are going to be hanging out at the Sunshine Coast on the 24th and 25th, I believe.
Yeah.
And before then, I'm going to be at the Brisbane Library on the 22nd of August and Gympie on the 23rd. And I can't wait to see different readers, different bookworms. I think there's always so much advice that you can pick up from an author talk, from being in the audience and also from being up on the stage. So I really look forward to talking about writing and books with other people.
Yeah, that's just fantastic. And are you going to the Romance Writers of Australia conference in Melbourne?
I'll be there with bells on. I can't wait. I had such a ball last year.
It's always an annual event and it's always just so great. And I'll be there as well, so we'll get to chat then.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, no, well, you're definitely keeping busy and I hope there's another book that you're writing.
There is. So I've just finished the second draft of book 2.
Mm-hmm.
So that's in the pipeline and that will be out this time next year with Alan Unwin. And so that focuses on a different McIntyre sister. So with Wildflower Ridge, the book's all about Penny. We do have the other sisters certainly in the mix, but the second book will focus on Angie McIntyre, who is the youngest of all the McIntyre girls. So that's got a slight owner-builder subplot as well, because we built our own house a couple of years ago. Wow. So there's lots of plot lines there that I can just draw from my experience. Hammer throwing and domestic arguments over paint colours and whatnot. So yeah.
Just imagine. Oh, that's really fantastic. So you're growing it as a series. Will it just be the 2 or will you be able to go a little further?
No, I decided I'd put 4 sisters in this book, and I think that's going to serve me very well because there's 4 distinct stories there at different stages of their life. So yeah. I think there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that sounds brilliant. I can see it's doing really well, and I can absolutely see it just doing fantastically for the foreseeable future. And I can't wait to meet you in person. We've been chatting for a while, so that'll be great. Well, where can we find you online and keep up with everything that you're doing?
Yes, well, I do love hearing from people. I've got a website which is mayalinnell.com, and that's got all the links to my Instagram, my Facebook. I do have Twitter. I'm not huge on it, but it's there. And so I love hearing from people and the different reviews that I've received, even if it's just an email of people saying, oh, I just love this character and I couldn't put it down, or I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning reading it, which has been so sweet to hear. So if anyone fancies dropping me a line of what they liked about it, or if they didn't like things, I'm always happy to take on board different comments.
Very game. Thank you so much for joining me today, Maya. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been lovely chatting to you and really nice to actually put a face to the name. It's nice to be able to talk in video as opposed to just a photo.
It is.
Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Jump onto my website, sarahwilliamsauthor.com, and join my mailing list to receive a free preview of my books and lots of other inspiration. If you like the show and want it to continue, you can become a sponsor for just a couple of dollars a month. Go to patreon.com/sarahwilliamsauthor.
And remember to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a review of the podcast. I'll be back next week with another loved up episode. Bye!